Thousands of people across the U.S. are expected to take part in the Women's March this Saturday. The first march was held the day after President Trump's inauguration in 2017, and every year since, the event has been held on January 21st to protest his presidency. This will be the second march of the year, just over 2 weeks before the election. Rachel O'Leary Carmona is the executive director of the Women's March. She joins me now from Washington. Rachel, great to have you. So for nearly 4 years, the Women's March, as I mentioned, has taken place in January. Tell us what prompted you to hold one now in October.
It's an October surprise, right? I think a number of things prompted us. I think hearing the groundswell from women all across the country who wanted to take to the streets to really make their voices heard about the conditions that we're in, all across the country, in communities, in states, in cities and counties, but also definitely a response to the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And I think that, there's just a deep mourning and yearning for leadership in this country that is not present in the current administration, and folks want to see us change.
Well, there are many issues at stake for advocates of women's rights. So what are participants showing up in support of?
I mean, our single issue is building and mobilizing the power of women. So people will show up with their leading issue, whatever that is. But what's really clear is that the power of women is the driving force in American politics right now. Women will decide the next president. And, the polls with men are dead even. And so when you look at the polling of women, and I know that, some polling is better than others, but right now it's women, and particularly women of color, who are going to deliver this election.
Well, Rachel, the first Women's March drew millions. I remember covering that and seeing the swelling population as crowds assembled there in Washington. But since then, your organization has at times struggled to define its identity and reconstitute your board. Where does the fight for women's rights stand now, and what should we expect on Saturday?
I mean, I think the women's movement, including our organization, has never been more unified than it is today. And we are, focused on one single thing, and that is a show of force, both this weekend and at the polls, in order to take this country from the dark path that it's on, and to start to fight for a better tomorrow. So that's our focus. That's our goal. That's where our power is headed.
Are counter-protesters a worry for you and other organizers?
No, I mean, at Women's March, we believe really strongly in freedom of speech. And so we think that folks should be able to go out and organize for what they believe in. And what we believe in is that women should be able to choose, when and how to have a family, that you shouldn't be at risk of losing your job because of who you are, who you love, or because of the color of your skin or your zip code, things that are fundamental. We want our children to have clean air and clean water. We want to know that our communities aren't going to burn down, and that our country is showing moral leadership and courage in the face of the climate crisis, and addressing the issues that have plagued our country for a long time, such as women's inequality and racial inequality. Those are the values that we march for, and they are free to march for their values as well.
So that first Women's March that we referenced, that was a direct response to President Trump's inauguration. And at that point, he was the person who made some really horrific comments, according to that Access Hollywood tape. But now he's been president for nearly 4 years. In your view, how will female voters respond to his presidency, and how much will that vote, if it's a voting bloc, factor into this year's election?
I think women are the largest voting bloc in our country, and I think it will factor directly into the election, because looking on 4 years, when the first march happened, we were worried about a lot of things, and now we're 4 years in, and we know exactly where we are under Trump's leadership, and that's sicker, poorer, terrified, and without a safety net or a helping hand, and no plan to help us. And so I think women deserve better, deserve more, and I think that women are going to turn out at the polls in order to fight for what we deserve, which is a better future where we have the ability to be healthier, happier, and more prosperous. And that's not possible under Trump.
Rachel, this is also all occurring during a global pandemic. There have been a lot of people who have talked about one of the things that they have objections to when it comes to President Trump's rallies is gathering people together during this global pandemic. What safety precautions are you taking and organizers expecting participants to take and to safeguard against the spread of the coronavirus?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important for us to note that we don't have to trade our values, for our free speech, and so we still can get out and protest as long as we do it safely. What we learned from the protests this summer is that when we are masked up, when we are safe with each other, when we observe distance, when we, keep hand sanitizer and maintain some space, that these protests can be perfectly safe. There have not been any correlations of COVID spikes with any of the protests, for example, from this summer. And so our mandate is that our march be safe in those ways. And so both our DC events and our distributed events will be following those guidelines in order to make sure folks can be heard, but be heard safely.
So you have to wear a mask to march?
Yes, masks are required.
All right. All right. Rachel O'Leary, Carmona, thank you.
Thank you.